You've made it to Pat Powell's Sonic Exchange.
The sun is rising, the stars fade away. Earth invites you to this brand new day. All you gotta do to keep it this way. Be kind to each other, come out and play. Respect the land you're on. Sky is blue, the clouds disperse. There's only one Earth in the whole universe. Food is abundant, no need to be first. Bring us your best and show us your worth. Respect the land you're on. Acknowledge all and one. Show an open hand, but first respect the land. Sun is shining, no rain to say. Earth's invitation renews each day. Everyone's welcome to visit and stay. Be kind to each other, enjoy your play. Respect the land you're on. Acknowledge all and one. Show an open hand, but first respect the land. Respect the land you're on. Acknowledge all and one. Show an open hand, but first respect the land you're on. Acknowledge all and one. Show an open hand, but first respect the land. Show an open hand, but first respect the land. Show an open hand, but first respect the land you're on.
Hey, welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to be back. So what do we got this episode?
We have a interesting musician that's been around in the same band for, I think, 41 or 42 years.
43.
43. There you go.
Yes. So today we're meeting with Mr. Ken Stewart, who's from a band called the Urban Guerillas, and they were formed back in 1981 in Adelaide. So Ken's from Adelaide, and he formed that band with two lads from Whyalla, which is on the Eyre Peninsula, Mr. Terry Burgan and Mr. John Martin. They relocated to Sydney in 83, continued to crank out the music, and hit the pub circuit. They've been putting out albums after album after album. They have over 15 albums and countless singles.
That's impressive.
It's massive, and still actively playing today. So to be, active in the music industry for so long, I think is
even more impressive.
It's phenomenal, and it's certainly something I think that's worth drawing attention to, and kudos for.
I only know of one other band that's been around, and not quite as long. They've only been around for 41 years, and they're in Melbourne, but we don't need to mention them.
Fair enough. So one of the things that I found really interesting about the Urban Guerillas is the activism and the political messaging that comes through in their music and in the things that they do. And they've done some amazing things for community and in that space. I mean, they've played for peace rallies. When Ansett went bust, they supported 6,000 stranded passengers who were just stuck at the airport. They went out and entertained them to just kind of break the mood a bit. They've played at the No War rally. They played for the Aboriginal Tent Embassy.
I've been there.
Really?
Yeah, it's awesome.
They were at the Festival of Freedoms. They support NAIDOC Week. They played at the Rock for Rights concert back in Melbourne, and they just keep going strong. And I think that's something that it's just formidable. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about all of the things that Ken has to say when you ask him the sticky questions.
The sticky questions. I'd like to welcome Ken Stewart from the Urban Guerillas. This is my opportunity to ask you a few sticky questions and see what your thoughts are. You know, I really want to learn something new, something different, something interesting.
Great, yeah.
So, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Pat.
All right. My first question is, do you believe that there are equal opportunities for different races and genders in music these days?
I think there's superficially, you would think so. There's a lot of support going into in any applications for grants or anything. There's and positions in the music industry. They're always keen to help and try and fix the imbalance that's there. So definitely there's an imbalance there, or there wouldn't be anything to fix.
Yeah.
So, yeah, by that being the case. So yes, they're trying, but no, I don't think. I actually was listening to an interview with Tony Armstrong, and it was the first time. That's the ABC commentator, and he became the first Aboriginal commentator in 2019. So we're
taken a
slow.
while.
Yeah, we're slow to pick up. Yeah.
I agree with you in as much as I think we're heading in the right direction, but I agree with you, it's painfully slow.
Yeah, very, very slow. Yeah.
Cool.
And the process, unfortunately, because of the politics in the air, the process leaves itself open to a lot of smarmy criticism from those people who don't care. And that's the... I always remember seeing in Adelaide a sign would have been the late 70s or something in the mall in Adelaide. It was a big painting on a wall, and somebody had put on it, land rights for gay whales. And that was their way of putting down sort of three important issues to dismiss them with a bit of smart assness.
Well, I definitely remember going to a club on Hindley Street that said, at the bottom of it was like no ethnic minorities on a plaque at the front of the
so it's a formal, legitimate... Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So, there was like a dress regulation, no this, no that.
And a race regulation.
And a race regulation. And the last time I went there, I took 3 African Americans with me. The shortest one was 6'1", and then it was 6'4", 6'8". And I went, come here, look at this, let's go in. Obviously it
with
was...
the height regulations as well.
Obviously there was no problem at the time when I took them there, but it was more that the plaque was still there.
Still there, yeah.
You think, right, attitudes have changed, why didn't you move the plaque?
Well, here comes the cancel culture, the other people, the outcries, the 3-word outcries, sadly, against, if you were to say, why that's a stupid thing to say, will take me 2 hours to explain to you, but you've got the 3 words in and you're geeing up and making people angry, and there's your support.
Yeah.
So there's no easy way, but you need, I think it comes from right up the top when you have people like Paul Keating that did the Redfern speech. If it comes from the top, you had good stuff flowing from the top all the time. But we've had a lot of dog whistling going on for many years.
Wow.
That's, to support the wrong side of how we should be, and the whole woke business,
that's another whole argument. Yeah.
So it's an ongoing fight. It doesn't just naturally flow, which is sad because it should, and it used to.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is when you looked at all those initiatives, because I think in songwriting that for me anyway, I find some of the songs I write, or many of the songs I write, are having a conversation with the audience.
Yeah.
And you're writing a song that actually promotes that conversation. So you're going out and you're having, it's not like a political rally, but it's more like a social conversation about what change. That's what the arts are. We're agents of change.
I like that. I've done similar things. I very much like the kind of activism in your music, and the knowledge that you impart, lyrically and musically, to say, well, hey, this is a situation. Look at it.
Yeah.
Think about it.
That's right. You kind of, I try and do it in a light-hearted way because there's a lot of humour to be had in. It's a bit, like the Green Day sort of walking contradiction. We are totally walking contradictions. There's so many things we believe in that we don't adhere to because, man, we're just human,
Yeah, exactly.
And that's forgiving, and it doesn't mean you have to be exactly on song with everything, but you've got to try to be the best you can and try to understand other people all the time.
I think at least you've got to listen.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's probably the most important thing to do as a musician, as you know, is listen. If you're not listening, then you're not actually a part of the ensemble, you're not sharing, and you're not giving, but listening is the most important part of it.
Yeah. So, and observing and seeing what goes on. I mean, we're kind of social observers. That's where the inspiration for songs come anyway.
Absolutely.
So I can remember starting to write I had an idea for a song when I was in Mexico of just watching how people were so affectionate in public, and with all of those things that you warned about with Mexico, I didn't feel any of that.
I was there for the first time last year, and I didn't feel unsafe at any point.
No.
Having said that, my knowledge of Mexico is that, all of the really bad stuff is actually along the border, and it doesn't matter whether you're on the American or the Mexican side.
Or out where they're growing the stuff and all the rest
it doesn't
of it.
matter. That's where it's dangerous. But you're in somewhere like Mexico City or Yucatan or something like that. It's just beautiful. And the people are beautiful.
Yeah, I had a great time. And so I had this idea in my head of the start of the song. People in Mexico City, they like to kiss in public, and so that was, I only had that part of the song.
Yeah.
To me, there's something more had to come, and then up pops Trump with he's going to build the wall and all the rest, and I thought, okay, there's the rest of the song, so we don't need walls. So I was able to say, why would you want to keep loving people out of your country?
Yeah.
And that became the song then. But so that was sort of hanging around for 4 years before it blossomed into a song. But there are ideas that sometimes they resolve straight away.
Sometimes they don't. Yeah.
They're just a half-assed idea.
Totally get it.
This is a great interview so far. I'm really enjoying this. Something that Ken said that really struck me was talking about the mystique that we need to have as musicians. Like people expect their musicians to be musicians and only musicians, that they don't have another job. And it led me to thinking, when we go for a job, we wonder how much we're going to get paid. Like, what's my hourly rate? What's my annual salary? So I started thinking a little bit about, well, what does a musician make? and it's an interesting rabbit hole. So the average live musician, so I'm not talking your big acts, I'm not talking the chart-topping people, I'm talking your average gig-playing band that you'll catch out in a venue like yourself. So my estimation is you're getting around 400-ish per show per band.
On average?
On average. Love it when my maths comes out right. So there's things that go into that. So it's not just the simple show that you've gone to see that is earning this money. So when you get to the venue, you've got to set up your gear.
Yep.
You've got to prep up your gear. So
Yep.
we've got to sound check it. We've got to make sure it all works. You play the gig, and then you've got to pack it all back down again and set it all back where it goes, and off you go home. So without taking into consideration any of your travel time, any of the time you might spend putting on costumes or makeup or any of those things, just your setup, prep, play and pack down is a 6-hour shift.
It can be more.
Yeah.
Depending on the gig, you sometimes have to be there before any guests arrive, and you can't pack down until they've left.
This is true.
So you can add another 2 hours to that on occasion.
Well, that's going to change the maths, which I haven't prepped. Yeah. But using the premise of a 6-hour shift and a $400 fee, you're looking at your whole band is getting paid $66 an hour. So for a 3-piece like the Urban Guerillas, we're talking each band member is getting $22 an hour for that 6-hour shift. You want to take a guess on what the actual minimum wage is in Australia?
I think it's about $24 something.
Yeah. $24.10 is the minimum wage per hour. So as a musician, based on a $400 show and a 6-hour woe to go gig, you're earning under minimum wage. And that's without taking into consideration your overheads. So a band has to consider their travel and transport. Equipment is so expensive, and it's not just a matter of set and forget. You've got to maintain it. So your equipment maintenance comes into it. If you've got a booking agent or you've gone through agencies, and we've heard Ken talk about that a lot during this interview, and an agent can take between 10 and 50% of your performance fee. So when you take all of those things out, your musicians are really working anywhere between $10 and $18 an hour, depending on what their overheads might look like.
Sounds about right.
I mean, there's other income streams that we could consider. So, you might have a merch stand where you can buy a keyring or a t-shirt or a vinyl.
That's an outlay as well.
Exactly. So, there's some extra little bits that you might be able to add to your musician's paycheck at the end of the day by contributing to the merch hole. But every little dollar helps. And our musicians are really earning below minimum wage for something that they put their heart and soul into for us to enjoy. So support your musicians.
Do you think that there is a more sustainable way to support musicians who don't top the charts?
Not at the top of the charts.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be looked at like a job. It's always looked at like, what's your real job? It's a bit of fun. And there used to be, I thought of this the other day, thinking about back in the 80s, it was always, you never told people what you did to finance the band. You were just a band.
Yeah.
And that was the mystique that you played in a band. And then I noticed that Triple J started, I don't know, probably late 90s or 2000, saying, okay, so what is your real job? And they actually, it was truthful, but it was also breaking that mystique of bands and accepting the fact that they could be slaves as far as their cultural contribution, that they'd have to go and work an ordinary job.
Yeah.
It used to be, it was you were less than a musician if you had another job.
Yeah.
It was hidden. So you never said what you did to finance a band.
I do understand that.
To turn around to saying that, it kind of, in me, it sort of broke some of the, it knocked music down a bit in people's eyes.
Well, I like mystique. In these modern days, for argument's sake, like when you're doing your tax at the end of the year, there's no such thing as a full-time musician. You know, you come under other. So you're either a teacher or a vet or a journalist, but you're not a musician, and that reels into what you're saying. I like the mystique. It's like when I see revealing shows on how magic trick works.
Yeah.
I never ever wanted to know how it worked.
Right.
I wanted to be blown away by this amazing thing that some magician did. Yeah. And it's the same with music. I don't necessarily need to know how someone came up with the sounds they did or the song that they created. I'm happy to just go and listen and be blown away.
Yeah.
You know, because I want the magic of the moment
Yeah.
to pick me up and elevate me, which is what music does for me.
Yeah. I actually, particularly with movies, they have a lot of orchestras playing music in the background. And I did some study on music, and part of it was being able to recognise instruments in an orchestra. And it kind of ruined everything for me for a while until I could sort of step away from it again. But I'd be hearing the instruments. I don't want to hear them individually. I just give me the whole package, as you say. I don't want to know how it's made and how you did that. But I guess you have to learn to switch on and switch off in that sense.
Well, I guess you do, but the magic of music for me is pure magic, simple. You know, I agree with you. Breaking it down to its nitty gritty takes away something from it, and every week I hear something that I've never heard before, and I kind of wonder, but I don't need an answer.
No.
I just I like that wonder, and I want to retain that as long as I live. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you another question. I'll resort to this. Do you think that artists now need to study commercial business to be commercially viable?
I think that comes back to what you're saying before. Now that's going to take some of the mystique out of it.
Yeah.
But is a contradiction. It should be seen as a job. There should be some way in all of the money that's thrown around in the pubs and the casinos and all the rest of it, there should be some money put aside to pay the band.
Yeah.
You know, I actually saw a band comp for Crown Casino, wanting a band comp that you don't get participation on the old TV shows of Star Search or whatever. You got paid for appearance.
Yes.
And I went into one of these comps and said, so what's the appearance fee? We want you to play here and here and here. And I said, well, what's the appearance fee? I don't want to do that. There's a $5,000 prize or something, and that's it. So you're getting all of these gigs for nothing, and I'll pass on your suggestion. But how could so much money flow with so little respect
to the musicians,
to the workers on the front bar that are getting people there and entertaining them? So I say it should be a job in that sense, but as far as I guess only the musicians who can do the sums are going to hang around.
This is true. I mean, like, there are people that are very good at, you know, kind of management skills, and they have a logical mind, and that works for them. But also there are the musicians who just play, and they're amazing people in their own right.
I know, and they need to be sort of nurtured.
But they need to be nurtured, and they need a little help. Sadly, I do believe that these days a little bit of business sense goes a long way to keeping you working.
Yeah.
Because what it's turned into over the years, in my mind anyway, is it's turned into the business of playing, not playing for the sake of playing. You know.
The problem is we don't have a unified front in that we're a band that we don't get asked as much as we used to play because they know we want to get paid. And even an agency, even last year when we did all these gigs, and they said, oh no, they wrapped up the agency on sells, so one agency on sells to another agency, and you go, now we've played two sold out gigs, 2 packed houses, and then another 2 gigs that weren't as many people there. They averaged them all out and said, oh gee, and they have their own people cruising around the night that they're getting paid. I'll go back on, do an encore, they're calling for it. These people are there to do that. When it comes to the pay, and they say, well, we didn't make enough money to pay the band, sorry. And I said, hang on, you're 2 full houses, so at least got to pay us for those 2.
Yeah.
No, they're all averaged together in the on-sell. And the other bands was happy to work for nothing, just for the exposure. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And that's why I don't get involved with agencies too much, because you've still got that kind of feudal system.
People forget that we're no different to anybody else. We've got kids, we've got mortgages, we've got food, but we've got the same bills that everybody else has got.
Yeah.
And we've got to earn that somehow.
Yeah.
So to think that we are there purely for your entertainment and don't need to be paid because we love what we do is somewhat unfair.
Yeah, very. And I think, attitudes vary for why that is. Some, you've been told all the things over the years. One was like, what do you want to be paid for? God, all those people in there clapping and stuff for you. Isn't that enough? I said, no, I'm hungry and I can't afford to buy anything.
Yeah. Doesn't pay the rent. Yeah.
But there's a lot of attitudes that people can grab at. But we used to be more unionised in the 80s in a general sense as well. I think society was probably better because in that time something like 80% of the people in Australia were in unions of some sort. Yeah. And over the years now we're down to about 20%, so the union doesn't have any power. Yeah. And I can remember doing a gig with the Saints in Melbourne. Yeah. We were doing we were touring through, and we lined up for a couple of gigs together in Melbourne, and one of them was at the Station Hotel, and the agents said to us, now pick up the money from the publican because he's paying you for the night. Again, full house. Yeah. 500 or 700 people or something in this that just packed, and the guy said in the night, no, the agent's going to pay you. So they told me to pick the money up from you. Now they know you've got to be somewhere else the next night, so you're not going to be hanging around, not going to be knocking on the door in the morning. So he goes, it started getting really rude, so I just piss off. Why don't you just go? You've done And anyway, so I rang the musicians union the next day, and I said, look, no, I had to wait until I got back to Sydney. Yeah. And so it was a few days later, I rang back and I said, look, I checked with the agent, they said, no, he definitely supposed to pay you. So I talked to the musicians union, and they said, look, we've checked with everybody, the guy should have paid you, the manager of the hotel should have paid us. So I said, ring him up one more time and ask him. And I rang him up and said, he was really angry at me, just piss off you, blah, 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 all the rest of it. So, okay, so I got back to the union and they said, okay, we'll sort it. And they rang up, and this is when you could have secondary boycotts. Yeah. What happened was the Transport Workers Union rang them up and said, there's no more beer comes to this pub until the band gets paid. They couldn't pay us quick enough then. Well, $300 or something.
Like, it just seems stupid.
Out of about 20 or 30 or 40 grand it went through until that.
It just seems stupid,
But we don't have that anymore. We don't have secondary boycotts unallowed. We don't have that community to fight back. And bands, how bands in the 80s got the way they were was that the bands got together and unionised, like the Dirty Pool Agency, they had the Angels, Mentals, anything. There's a whole bunch of bands that wouldn't play outside of their own agenda, so they made sure they all got paid. And that was how the band started to get paid. And that's part of their payback was, and I'll have cheese and greens and rare meats from the Orient.
I do remember that.
It was sort of payback for...
I was with the Harbour Agency back then, so it's the same kind of deal.
So I've got something else really interesting I wanted to share.
Hit me.
That was too easy. No, but in all seriousness, there was a statement made semi-recently by Daniel Ek, who is the CEO of Spotify. So he made a rather brazen statement that the cost of creating content is close to zero for multiple reasons. And it blew the music industry up. I think there were plenty of musicians and well-known musicians who said things like, I don't create content, I create music. And I think that's really, really fair. But there's a post that we've shared to the Powell Sonic Exchange Facebook page. So if you haven't already, come over and check it out. But it was made by a musician by the name of Sam Buckingham. Mm-hmm. And she called out some really awesome things in this post that went viral, where she said, me creating content is Daniel's goal for me so that his business remains viable. And I thought that was a really powerful quote.
Yeah.
And she goes on to say that her most successful album cost her $20,000 to make and countless hours to write and prepare. And you're a music writer and composer yourself, so you know exactly what she's talking about here. Putting that up on Spotify pays a streaming compensation structure of 0.3 to 0.5 cents per stream. So I did a little bit of maths. And for Sam Buckingham to break even on that $20,000 investment for that album, her album would need to play continuously on repeat for 38 years before she would make that same amount back on royalties. And I thought that was really, really powerful and something quite thought-provoking for everybody else that might think that it's on Spotify, they're making a mozza.
I think the general public believes that if you're on Spotify, you're successful, you're doing well. And that's not quite the case. Like, it's a good promotional tool, but that's about it.
Yeah. And there were some really great comments that followed off on that post. So there was a statement that said there are other platforms out there like Patreon or Locals or Substack. Yeah. And they do pay more to our musicians, but they also cost more.
Yep.
And they're by the design, I guess they're slightly more limited. So as a consumer, you're not going to necessarily get the variety that you get from a randomized Spotify or other streaming service playlist. And then, of course, you've got your TikTok and your YouTube and all of those other things, which you're not earning a cent on unless somebody pays you for it. But you're also exposing your art to greater intellectual property theft, because it's very easy for someone to sample your content off of that and recreate it and repost it without any form of compensation to you. So it leaves musicians in a real position, I think, where you're in a quandary. Like, do you want your music to be accessible? Are you wanting to put it out there to the masses, or are you really hoping to make some sort of financial retribution on it? And
I think as a musician, everything that you do is a double-edged sword. I think that as a musician, everything that you do is a double-edged sword. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You want to play, you want to be heard, you also want to be paid. In the end, usually as a creative, being heard is probably more important to you than making money, which is sad, because in the end, we live in this society that we live in and we need money to rent, to buy, to do whatever, and we're not getting it.
No, completely agree. And I don't think we get into the industry as musicians because we think it's going to make us a lot of money. It's a passion project. It's something we enjoy. But to a point that you'll hear a lot in this interview, if that's your job, then you still have the same expenses. You still have the same bills to pay, and food doesn't cost you any less just because you're a musician. So I thought it was a good point to ponder.
AI is something that you think we should worry about, or something we should embrace?
I don't know. I haven't really done. I haven't really thought about how it affects my world. I mean, you use when you're doing videos or you're doing anything, you're always playing around with stuff. You know? I mean, in our latest video, we're sitting in a flying saucer. You know.
Yeah.
So the illusion of anything, I don't have any problem with. But I did get from a DJ that plays our music a lot on one community stations, said one time, he sent me this stuff, he says, look at this poetry or this song, words of the song. He just dialed up an idea and it come back, and I thought, because it's disturbingly not half bad.
Yeah, well.
And I thought, well, yeah, true, but it's just the lining words up in a nice way is one thing, but actually coming from the heart,
I think
loaded
you're right.
with experience, angst, pain, happiness, and world emotions. Well, I don't think it'd line up, but I'd want to hear the music.
I think you're right. I watched a thing with a DJ in Europe, Urban Guerillas, who's quite famous. He's played more than anybody else on the planet, I think. So he's doing a live gig, and he uses AI to create a track, and then an Eminem sound-alike to do a rap over it. He does it on the fly in front of thousands of people. And I thought, that's amazing, but at the same time, there's no human feeling to it, because it's working on something that's a bit like a factory conveyor belt. It's like we can take something from here and take something from there and manufacture something, but it doesn't have the emotion, the pathos, the heart of stuff that a human creates. And I think that yes, we've got it and we're stuck with it, and it can be used. But I remember when sampling came in and stuff like that. I was against it for a long time. I'm not particularly crazy about it now either. But some people are clever, some people are not. So I found that musicians in the hands of technology do amazing things. People who are not musicians are not so great.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a tool like any other tool, and I've thought about this going back to the electric lemming that was about people working to put themselves out of work by supporting machines, like the people at the shopping centre.
Yeah.
That, no, don't go to see a human. Come over here, I'll show you how to use the robots.
Yeah.
And the bank does the same thing.
Yeah.
And I always thought of these people as, it's ridiculous to do that, because we want to have an economy that supports the community. What you're doing is crashing the community to support an economy that doesn't serve humanity at all.
It's the wrong way around.
And I think that's the same with, and in actual fact, the logo for the Urban Guerillas is a machine cog rolling along and a hand grabs it, that the humans should be in control of the machines. That was kind of a point that I've been on. I think the same with AI, that as long as we're in charge, as long as the humans can use whatever tools are there to give some kind of humanitarian or emotional context to the words or whatever they're making, whatever's being formed, then it's okay. It's just another tool.
I agree.
But if you can say, oh, I've got a machine that does this now, we can sack all the humans, I'm now listening to this, well,
it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs.
It's kill the humans. The robots, you're just getting into it all.
Skynet is alive and well. It's
Bender.
Bender at least I like.
Kiss my shiny.
So, in this era, in this present time, is being a musician still worthwhile or just a dream?
Well, look, the dream was for me, when I was a teenager, was if I could play one song all the way through on a stage in front of people, that would be amazing, So that was a dream. You rehearse like mad to make sure you get it right, so you remember the words and you remember the bits you've got to do, and you rehearse together so that you can. I mean, when you're playing with people for a long time, you just look at them and know what what's going to
Yeah,
happen next. And you're both going to...
I actually love, that's a part of communicating in a band that I love. It's the nod, the wink, the shoulder shrug, whatever.
That's right.
And it tells, it's a whole conversation piece between you, which is fantastic. The audience they know something's going on, but they don't know what. And then they hear the result and they get off on it.
Yeah.
So now that you've done more than one gig and you played more than one song all the way through, are you still just as happy?
Oh, absolutely. I can do solo stuff, and it's probably more portable to do that, but I don't enjoy it as much as the monster that lies within a band. You know,
I agree with you totally. Yeah.
I really do enjoy that, and those moments. If you're playing by yourself, you kind of you've it's all up to you. You've got to, there's no. It's relentless. You've got to totally be performing in between songs while you're doing the song. When you're playing with somebody else, or a band, or even a duo, you can take a break from it. You take over for a while. I'm just going to sort of chill out on this.
Yeah.
But the great thing about playing music is while you're doing it, you're empty of all of the.
Yeah.
What you wanted when you were going to watch a football match, but there's so much politics, a ball bouncing around and people catching it. You know, I just want a release from it. You get that in music. You get that in a band, where you're the whole for that hour or hour and a half or whatever. You're totally at ease with everything. You're not focused on anything but being you're part of that band.
To me, that's probably the closest to a religious experience I get. It's, the music's perfect. You're singing or playing the way you want to play. People are enjoying it and getting off on what you're doing. And that, for me, that's the whole spirituality of life.
Yeah, for me too. So to say like, no, I've done enough to get it. It's the adrenaline's great when you finish playing and you've just sort of
still high.
For days you're kind of floating around.
Absolutely.
So, let's talk AI.
Oh, okay. I'm interested.
I thought you might be, and you probably know more about this than I do, because I think what I've stumbled across might be a bit close to home for you because of your many talents. But there's been a recent Senate inquiry in June where the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance have appeared before the Senate before the Senate inquiry, to look into, I guess, the ethics and the use of artificial intelligence and the way it is impacting the arts and music industry. So it was reported in the Australian Financial Review, and the headline for that article said, AI is the final nail in the coffin for the Australian music industry. Strong statement.
Strong statement. I wouldn't agree with that. I'm a member of that union, so I'm also involved. But it's about protection. I don't think that the industry is dead. I don't think there's any nails going in any coffins, but I can see difficulties.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of this inquiry. So the paper's due to be tabled on the 19th of September, so we will be keeping a really close eye on that. But they're calling for a number of reforms. So, one of the big ones is for AI companies to actually name what they're training their AI models on, because at the moment they're just skimming. I think you used the term Skynet, but they're skimming the internet for content, picking out the good bits and using whatever they can. And at the moment, like if I was to do that with a university assignment back in the day, that would have been called plagiarism. We use it in AI and it's considered to be groundbreaking. So they need to name where that information's come from. They need to be, the recommendations are that they'll be, encouraging them to, or mandating them to seek consent from the people who have created that content, because it is their IP. Yeah. But also to make sure that they're fairly compensated.
Yeah.
And we're seeing stuff that's, been reported in the media, and it's quite well known that Scarlett Johansson took on a company some time ago now where they approached her to be the voice of an AI assistant, and she said no. So they used AI and did it anyway, and she found out about it and had the means and the ability to take them on and have that overturned, and that was a huge landmark precedent, I think,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
all of this. But, more recently, there's an Australian voice actor, this came out yesterday, who's made news. He was a voice actor in an animated children's series. So he was the voice of a particular character. That series stopped production. But he's been sent a link to YouTube where the series has made a resurgence.
Yes.
And they've released brand new episodes that he didn't participate in and didn't lend his voice to, but he's still recognising his voice coming through in that character. So it's a close to home emerging story that again will be interesting to follow and see where that comes from, because they've obviously established that character off of the back of his voice. But it is very much his property and his artistic license.
Well, they're going to do things like that, but as long as if they pay for it and go about getting the permission to use the voice in the correct way, then fine, no one's going to complain. But to blatantly steal, copy, coerce, deceive is just wrong. It's just a wrong way to go about it. I don't think that we can get away from AI being a part of what happens from now on. But you know what? The human element gets lost with AI. That may change in the future, but you just got to go about it the right way. People are important, and the human element is everything in voicing, in singing, in anything. You still want to be able to connect. And at this moment in time, as good as AI is, and as fast as it is, it doesn't connect. I've got an interesting question that I thought of earlier today that I'm going to ask you. And, I was having a chat with Terry, and we were talking about the old days and all the rest of it. So what would have been your favourite venue, either then or now, to play at, and why?
Well, there's a few of them really. If I
Could you pick one?
to pick one, well, I would say in Sydney would have been the Sando, because it was doing residencies there all the time. You had to put the stage together with milk crates and all the rest of it, and that was funny. Like, your jigsaw puzzle to start the night. And that was funny because climbing the bar and slide along. It was really, it was like a party when you
But
played.
the venue had a character to it.
Yeah.
And so I understand why you say the Sando. Sadly, I did the very last gig there. At that point, Tony Townsend owned it, but I knew Tony from when he used to book for the Chevron in the Cross back in the 80s. So we've been friends for a long time, and it hurt that one person who thought it was too noisy shut the place down.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah,
well, I'll go back even further when Warren Spooner owned the pub.
Yeah.
And it was the university students could come and work behind the bar to get a bit of extra cash. It was part of the community. The whole thing was there, and it didn't matter what night you played, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was always well attended.
So you've used that word again that you've used a few times in this interview, which is community. And community is everything.
It is. That's what we're like I said, we're a focal point for things in the community. When there's a disaster, first thing they want is the bands to come along and
we're always the first to raise our hands to help.
To say But sadly, it hasn't. Since the pandemic and all the bands got
doesn't necessarily work for us.
Nobody's come to help us out. Yeah.
But so that's the only whinge for today. But
no, well, there's a unfortunately huge disconnect between what we see on TV, what we think's going on, and what is actually going on.
Yeah.
I got the shock of my life with how what's going on with all the country pubs, as I mentioned earlier. they're all being cartel. They're putting. You would get the impression that poker machines are being wound down.
Yeah.
You'd get the impression.
Well, I do have that impression, and no, it's not.
Yeah. It's they're going. Maybe in the cities, and anybody does it gets talk about it. Then talk about all of the smaller pubs that have been taken over at the same time and put in a cartel. So when you get a place like Powell in the middle of the Eyre Peninsula, two pubs, and they're putting in poker machines in them as we speak. You go, well, that's not the impression I get from the media, and the same about musicians being paid. You get that impression from the media as well, that there's if you were working, if you had a government contract or something there, you would be paid $295 each or something. Yeah. But that's, as I say, that's nowhere near most of it.
I probably only know of a handful of pubs that do not have poker machines. You know, one of the first was the Tarthra Hotel, which is down the coast.
Tarthra?
Yeah, Tarthra.
Yeah, we share a thing with Midnight Oil. We've been banned from the Tarthra.
You've been banned from there?
Yeah. This is going back a few years, but Midnight Oil, the guy that ran it was a raving right-winger.
Oh, right.
And he banned Midnight Oil after he heard him, and then when we went down there and played them on time, as well. So.
Well, the guy that owns it now owns a venue in the snow in Perisher and the Tarthra, and he's taken all the pokies out, you know.
Oh, good on him.
Which is great, you know, so...
Yeah, well, I don't imagine the guy that was banned us would even be alive. Yes, I know the pub well, Yeah,
there you go. Anyway, look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, my pleasure, Pat.
And, good to hear your insights and the stories. You know, I think the listeners will learn something at least.
Yeah, well, I don't want to discourage anybody. The facts are there, but you've got to work out ways to get around it. As you say.
I agree.
If you've got some individuality, if you've got a story to tell, then you should try your darndest to get out there and tell your story.
Yeah.
And don't be discouraged by anybody. And with all of the negative things that happen, you just never know what you might do on the internet that might turn the tide. You just don't know.
So true, so true. You know, and I think we've always had this moniker that you're only as good as your last gig, right? So you always do the best you can do because you never know who's in the audience.
No, that's right. Well, I always play each gig like it might be your last, eh?
Yeah.
Something that Ken said earlier really resonated with me, and I wanted to unpack it a little bit more because I thought it was just such a good statement, is that when a disaster happens or something big happens in our community, our musicians are always there for them. So, you know, we've seen, like, you know, in more recent years, we had the Firefight Australia where Celeste Barber brought together pretty much all of the Australian music industry for a massive concert at the SCG. You know, Ken and his band performed to the 6,000 stranded tourists at Sydney Airport when Ansett collapsed. There's so many examples of that in the community, but where, you know, is that a balanced scale?
No, it's not balanced. I mean, musicians always come to the fore. I've done countless community events, and the frustration is always that the musician will give of his time and energy to support community for free. The sound equipment, the lighting, the catering will all be paid and paid for. They're not giving anything for free. And then when COVID came along and musicians were suffering, we struggled to get support. We had to beg and claw for every little bit that we got, and a lot of people got nothing. You know, but it's frustrating, but it's the nature of musicians. We will always stand up to support community because in the normal walk of things, when we play, the community is there to be entertained by us, and you have this great symbiotic relationship where they support us, we give more to them, they give more back, and that's a wonderful thing. But when times are tough, it doesn't always seem to balance out.
What do you think is there a solution to that? Is there
I think that the more community as a whole understands what it takes to create and how much you give up for the community at large, they'll understand a little bit more about how hard it is to do what we do, because a lot of people think that all you do is, grab your guitar and go out there and sing 2 tunes,
Yeah.
But there's the 10,000 hours that we put in, same as any doctor or any other professional does, You put in a lot of years learning your craft to the point where you can entertain anyone, anywhere, at any time, in any situation, without question.
and with confidence?
And with confidence, but we don't always get the recognition for it. The recognition is saved for the ones who make it to the top. But the ones that are at the beginning or in the middle or traversing the mountain to get somewhere just don't get the support and the recognition. And that's frustrating. Frustrating.
It is.
It won't stop us doing anything because we're not driven by... We're certainly not driven by money and greed, but a little support here and there would go a long way.
Yeah. And when you said during this interview, and on a couple of occasions, that as a musician, a big part of the get back is the vibe, is the satisfaction of doing that. But again,
it's seeing an audience smiling and enjoying and dancing to what you've created. That's the best drug in the world. It really is, and it's cheap, But it's it's about sharing, and a lot of people really don't know how to share.
I like that. There's a song lyric in that.
I think it should be written.
That was an awesome show. I really enjoyed that.
I did too. I'm still blown away by the amount of years he's managed to keep a band alive and vibrant. 43 years, that is miraculous.
It is. And I got so much out of listening to the way that Ken, expresses his views and his beliefs through his music. I think that's, it's not necessarily hugely unique, but it is unique to his music. And it was a different spin to, I guess, a lot of the stuff that we hear in the mainstream. It was good. I really enjoyed it. It was refreshing.
You really need to check out the new single, Invitation, and the Urban Guerillas have a stack of albums.
Absolutely.
So get them all. Support live music, support local Australian content, but songs, not content. And be one of the people that is supporting us.
Absolutely. You've been watching the Powell Sonic Exchange. I'm Ella Caulfield.
I'm Pat Powell.
And we'll see you next time.
You've made it to Pat Powell's Sonic Exchange.